The Todd Shapiro Show.
Time to hit the button!
On Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.
Hello up there. It's Brad J. Lamb.
You too can become a condo millionaire.
The Todd Shapiro Show.
Brad made me a condo millionaire.
I had a small part in that.
Well, no, I was buying and living, and then you're holding up a sign.
Is this for me?
This for
Did
every
you actually
guest.
put?
It's for every guest.
Because I did a radio thing in Winnipeg on like a big Canadian, CBC or one of those things, and they told me, listen, you can't swear. First thing I did was I swore.
Oh no!
It's just because it's so innate to me. It's
you're who you are.
It's hard not to, honestly. It's a bad thing to say, but it is. But I promise I won't swear.
No, and it's funny. It's interesting because swearing when it's innate to them and it just comes out naturally, people shouldn't have an issue with that. And in the old show, when we worked on Canada Laughs, you could because it was an uncensored channel. This is a censored channel. But I find censorship so strange. I like censorship in terms of you're doing hate crimes and talking like that way. I can understand that. But like language, no one cares about language anymore.
So I can swear?
No. It'll cost me. I'll get in trouble for it. Hey, let's start with you. How everything's good with you?
Yeah, when I used to be on your show a lot, you asked me that question every week, and I answered the same way. Things are always just kind of okay.
Yeah.
Because I have some amazing things going on in my life, and I have some absolutely horrible things going on in my life. It's just when you choose to try to do big things. It's just like talk to Elon Musk, man. I'm obviously not Elon Musk, but if you talk to Elon Musk, he'll say the same thing when he's being honest. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, it's interesting because and people might always from the outside try and weigh things on financial success, but that's not what makes people truly happy. This is, and there's other things in your life that people trying to bring you down, governments trying to resist certain projects you're doing, all the compliance stuff you got. It's nonstop. Employees, massive staff. It doesn't end.
No. I mean, it could be just someone who is hitting it, trying to get more money, and they're important, but are they that important? And you have to make these decisions of saying no and losing people. I don't know. It's just so. Most people, I think would say that I'm pretty blessed and I have a lot of great things going on, and I do. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes I have to pinch myself and say, dude, relax. You've got a great life. But in achieving that great life, there's a lot of struggle. There's a lot of struggle.
Just for those who don't necessarily know the name Brad Lamb, and we might have new listeners here on this channel. It's only been just over a week for me. How many projects now? How many developments have you done?
I should know this number. It's going to be around between 15 and 18 large scale condo developments, meaning 150 units to 300 units per building. Fair amount. The funny thing is, it doesn't feel like a lot. It feels like I just started, and I have so much more to do. I have right now probably 17 or 20 that are either being built. So those are completed. The ones I said, but I have 17 or 20 that are either being built right now, or I've just bought the land and I'm going to do something at some point, and I'm rolling them all out. I'm busier now than I've ever been, it's a big nut, man. It's always a lot to do and a lot of stress.
How many provinces are you in now?
Well, we were involved in. I co-developed 2 buildings in. I had a minority stake. I should be clear about that, in Montreal. About 350 units there, and then I did the same province as Toronto. I did 4 buildings where I co-developed them, and then I just finished 2, one 3 years ago and one just today. We got our occupancy today for the
congrats.
Suites. Struggle, but anyway, in Ottawa, and I've done a whole bunch in Toronto, and I've done one in Calgary. I have a big one we're supposed to do, but it's tough out there. And I have 2 sites in Edmonton. And again, it's real tough out there too. So we're kind of stuck in the mud out west. We finished the one; the other ones are not starting. We're just kind of holding. And I think I have two active in Ottawa and Hamilton. Television City is the project. I think you actually.
Yeah, I own a unit there, pre-construction.
Yeah, and we're actually going to the OMB in March there, and then I have another 4 in Hamilton that 4 that we're going to do, and we're looking at other places. You know what I learned from my forays in other cities and other provinces is we're a mid-sized builder, mid-sized developer. And we don't really do things well unless we are hands-on in all things. And where I failed is where I try to work. Didn't make a whole lot of money in Montreal. Didn't make really any money to speak of in Ottawa. I mean, little bits, but not worth the effort. And really not too much in Calgary so far. So, we're going to focus around home. I want to have more control over every element. And what we lose control of is construction. In Ontario, we build ourselves. We have our own construction company in Southern Ontario, but we can't do that in Ottawa. We don't have. It means I have to hire a whole new team, and it's not worth it. So we're going to focus on and do a lot of work now in Southern Ontario, around Toronto.
Great to hear. Brad Lamb's hanging out with us. You said earlier that it was tough out west. Did you mean tough getting buildings done, or tough in terms of economy and selling units?
Well, it's tough in everything. So. So it's tough selling because the economy is not good, and so it was really bad in 2000. So when we started, it was good. Mm-hmm. We started in 2011, it was good. We got a building done. 2014, terrible. Still finishing that building in the final sales, and then all the other stuff we were doing, we were in the middle of selling stuff in 2014, and everything went terribly.
Good cover.
Yeah, and not so much that the projects were brilliant and amazing, but people just stopped buying because they're terrified. Right, jobs are lost and money is lost. And then when we built the first tower, it's a 35-story tower roughly in Calgary. It's a beautiful tower. It's I think the best residential tower between Toronto and Vancouver. So that leaves you pretty well Calgary
yeah.
right there. But it was a real struggle to build. We had a lot of trouble with the trades. Not a big fan of the Calgary trades. Very lazy, very overpaid, very fat. Toronto is a great place to work because the trades are not fat, meaning they work hard. They get a lot more done with less. And it costs us less here. People get paid more money to do the same thing in Calgary, or they used to. It's a bit, but it's tough to roll that back. When a union or a trade gets a certain buck, when things go bad, they're not going to take less money. They just don't get work.
It makes a lot of sense. When the economy was booming out that way and everything was going well, I guess the unions got together and there's a lot of stuff going on, so they can start using leverage and demand more money. But then when stuff slows down, they don't want to work for any less. I know that as a radio show, so unfortunately, they just said, "Well, you're getting nothing." And I kept going anyway. So the state of the economy, and every day, the same conversations we used to have for week after week after week. Every media outlet seems to just poo-poo on this housing market, on what's going on in Canada, fear mongering, putting a lot of the worries in people's heads that there is going to be this epic collapse and stuff, and it really epic. Some of them, they really talk about it in very harsh ways. What are you thinking in terms of call it the next year to two? Where's your head at with all this?
Well, the only thing in my mind that would really cause so you're not going to have a crash in Toronto real estate. You could have what we're in right now is it's not a balanced market. It's still a seller's market, but it's not the seller's market it was. So the volumes are down. The price increases are stabilizing. We're not seeing high prices. We're not seeing changes from day to day. Like 2 years ago, if you put a property up for sale and sold it, and someone else listed the one above, it would be $30,000 or $40,000 more for the same thing, one floor above, and even one floor below, you might get that. We're not getting that now. We're getting moderate price increases, and so I think government can cause a lot of havoc in the marketplace, and so they're the only ones that can really, I think, right now unseat it, the overall marketplace and push it to recession. Most of the world is growing. Canada is going to grow this year, not by a lot, but they'll grow. It'll probably grow 1%, so less than I think the Bank of Canada thought last year. All the raising of rates was a mistake, and then I think they have to unwind that. I really do, and I think that China, United States, China for sure, South America, Europe and Canada, England and Australia are all going to see moderate growth, not great growth. China will have great growth compared to us, but moderate compared to China. And they make up a lot of stats in China. So given all that, I think that all the central banks in the big 12 countries are going to be probably easing money, I think. And I also think that the government's going to back off on some of their crazy draconian measures that they did for sure in Ontario. This progressive, this conservative government that's in power now has already done a big thing by, basically changing the Rent Control Act, right? As fairly as they could. And that's big because now, if you're building a new apartment or you're buying a new apartment today, if it's new, there's no rent controls in that. And so it's going to stimulate economic growth, which is what we want. We want more apartments. We want more rental places. But to answer your question, I think we're not going to see a collapse of real estate anywhere in Canada. Some markets are going to go up. Like Montreal is very strong. Ottawa last year and this year are going to be very, very strong and through next year. And it's because there was an overbuilding and then there was nothing. And now there's a shortage. And so prices are going up. And tech is there in a big way, taking lots of space. And they all want to be downtown. Toronto's going to go sideways. I don't think you're going to see huge price increases this year. Nothing's going to fall out of bed. There's still a lot of people who want to live here. For sure, prices have gone up a lot. And I think that salaries need to kind of catch up with that. So I told you at the start, I'm being pressured in my office to pay people more money for the same job. That's happening because they're having a hard time, right?
Without a doubt. I mean, I'm always amazed that people can afford to live in the city, but the city is where everyone wants to be. And the city is really, at the end of the day, I think if we were to look, end of the day, I'm sounding like the world's going to come to an end, but say, 2 decades from now, this will be the hub of Canada. I mean, it's growing out, which is part of the reason why you love Hamilton so much, right?
Yeah, for sure. Listen, so I think there's no question that more people are going to want to move to Toronto. We're interestingly enough, last year was one of the worst years for sales of new condos. And not because people didn't want to buy them, it's because there weren't a lot launched. And this year is going to be really bad. I mean, there's not going to be much in the market that's new this year.
In the Toronto area?
In the southwest Ontario. Yeah.
How many units?
So someone asked me this question today from a newspaper, and so I'm going on memory, but I'm going to say in 2017 there's probably 33,000 new condos sold. This year I'm going to say probably 18,000. I think I'm right about that. And I think 2018, 18,000. I think this year you'll probably see less than 15, maybe 12,000. There's a need for 30,000 new condo starts for a balanced market. And we're not going to get that because
Why is
we're not
that?
selling enough. So the previous administration, the previous provincial administration, created rent controls, taxed investors, foreign investors, eliminated the OMB, supported the city, changes. So they created these 2 historical control districts downtown. They've stopped all development because they're putting ridiculous restrictions on knocking down buildings and incorporating old buildings into new buildings. And then the other thing they've created is this TO core idea where they've expanded the commercial zone and prevented any residential in the new expanded commercial zone downtown. And among other terrible things like, this zoning, I think it's called exclusionary or non-exclusionary. Anyway, it's a kind of zoning where if you're going to build a condo building, you need to include office in it, and more office than you do just normal retail. It'd be several floors of office. And in addition, if you're building condos, market value condos, you have to put in some low-income housing into it. So who honestly wants to live in a condo that's got low-income housing within it? It's just stupid. Like no one's going to want to pay $1,000 or $1,200 a foot and have a guy next door paying $600 a month rent. It's silly, right? Getting the private industry to subsidize directly through the creation of low-income housing is a bad idea. What should happen is tax people and use the tax money to create low-income housing for people that can't afford it. But don't force developers to build it. It's a bad idea. We're not going to build. So right now what's going on is developers, the biggest problem is the OMB is gone, the Ontario Municipal Board. It's no place to fight against the city.
Is that
now.
coming back now? That's good. That's back because is it back?
There's strong rumors to suggest that it's coming back in April or May or June sometime. I've heard that this current government, the Ford government, wants to give 1 year to the non-OMB situation, and then it's failing miserably. And you know this because we've all sitting our hands. No one's putting in new files to the city because the difference is like this. Without the OMB going to the city hat in hand, let's say it's a 10,000 square foot site, they're going to say you can have 70,000 feet on the site. The OMB, you could have got 120,000 feet on the site. The 70,000 is being mean-spirited. Well, we're now in control, so F you, you don't have the OMB to twist our arms anymore or go and actually win. The threat of losing or actually losing and getting more square footage. And developers say, well, I'm not going to spend $20 million on a site to get 70,000 feet. I'll wait. It's going to change. If we all wait, nothing gets built. And that's what's happening. No one's putting in applications. Everything's shut down. Eventually, someone's going to give.
So it's like the Nylander holdout, but the developers are holding out right now. So they own land; they're willing just to pay the tax on that land, let that sit, watch it increase in value anyway, and then just hold off on building based on mainly based on height restrictions?
Well, height and density. I mean, I own 7 sites I've had for years that we're going to bring out a hotel, condo, office, all this stuff. I've been squirreling away for years. All my hard work has gone into owning these 7 sites. And then we were planning on putting these out in the marketplace in the next few years. I'm not going to. I'll sit until I die. It doesn't matter. They're all rented. And I bought them years ago, so the rent actually more or less covers or does cover and makes money on the site, on the properties. I'm not going to, as a developer, you fight so hard to get development sites. And then you fight so hard to finance them and make them earn enough revenue. You got to renovate them and bring in tenants and improve them, and then sit on them for years and years and years and years. All the crazy stuff that the city does to property to really devalue it. In my mind, anyways. And so I'm just not going to devalue it. I'll sit on it until changes happen. And I'm going to tell you, changes will happen. It's just impossible to imagine that the councillor of your ward tells you what you can build. The super well-educated counselor who has zero planning, engineering, technology experience is the one to tell everyone in the city what's appropriate for a development site.
Does Trudeau get involved at all when it comes to housing and real estate?
Not.
I don't hear him talk about that issue at all.
They do have a mandate to create affordable housing. Adam Vaughan, a former counselor, is a big advocate in his government for that, and they created a fund of some kind. I'm not sure if they've actually spent it, but he is an advocate for socialized housing, and we need socialized housing. Listen, I think that we should be, taking tax monies that are generated through taxing individuals, rich and middle class, and whoever else, people that buy things and pay GST and HST. And we should be allocating money to provide housing for people that can't afford it. We absolutely should. But we shouldn't make it so easy to get that everybody wants it, right? It needs to be for those that really need it.
Sure.
Not for people that just kind of want to smoke weed all day and, eat Mae West and Pepsi and not act. I'm not making reference to French people, by the way, with that comment. But, anybody that can get a job and support themselves and pay their rent should pay their rent. But there's certain people that just can't do it. Maybe they have a lot of kids and they can't do daycare and work, whatever it is.
But I agree. Listen, and I'll step in here. I agree with you, man. There is giving back, and then there is giving handouts. Right. And I don't want to give handouts. I want to give back to those who truly need it. And I think too many people in a younger generation, and I'll say it as it is, and I've kind of been going a little bit harder with this. The older I get, and see how hard I work, to be honest, and how hard my wife works, and how I have a child, and we're just doing our best to provide for him. It's that a lot of people in this world are taking handouts, and they expect that and keep expecting it, and that doesn't make it fair. For capitalism will always exist, but a country can exist if no one wants to make that effort to grow it together, and they really can't. With that being said, I'm super empathetic when it comes to, I think we should be focusing on the homeless more than even lower income. Like you see these homeless issues, and would you have any thoughts on that, on how we can get more?
Both both groups need help. I mean, I know of people that say a young woman that was in a relationship, got pregnant, had a kid, couldn't work and have a kid, and transit's difficult and getting to and from a job, and in the end it's almost makes less sense to work and just collect welfare and baby money and not work. So we need to change the system so there's no incentive for that. But in that case, I think we need to support these young people who need to get a start, and maybe also subsidize their education so they go back in school and get out of that rut that they can't ever get out of. Like, if you can't ever get a head start and get some momentum going, you're going to get stuck there for the rest of your life. So I think that's stuff we really need to focus on. The homeless situation, we obviously need shelters. I don't know that much about homeless people, but I'd say that I don't think a lot of homeless people end up not being homeless. I mean, it seems to me that they end up shuffling from one shelter to the other, and I don't know what the solution is to bring those people back into regular society where they have get a job and support themselves. I don't know what the stats are on that, but I mean, where I live downtown, I see countless people, dozens in blankets when it's very cold, huddling on a hot air vent, and I just wonder how they live the night. We need more shelters for sure.
Definitely. Well, Brad, I always love catching up with you, and I think it's just such a realistic approach to hearing about real estate. And the only last question I'll ask you, is it true that there are more realtors now than actual immigrants in this country coming every year? I keep seeing everyone's a realtor these days.
You mean across Canada or just in Toronto?
Yeah, everywhere. I'm just sort of making a joke.
Well,
I feel like every day I'm like, that person's a realtor.
There's a lot of realtors. There's I think 60,000 realtors in Toronto.
How do we get the good ones? How do we know who the good ones are?
Over half of the realtors in Toronto don't sell a property a year. Over half. And 10% sell 90% of the property. So how you find a good realtor, it's the realtor you hear about, the realtor that's on all the signs, the realtor that advertises across the city, the realtors that you see everywhere and actually spend money. Those are the ones to hire.
You still doing the lamb heads billboards?
I've got 2 ideas this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got a billboard you might want to buy on. I'm serious. Okay. Brad Lamb, thank you so much. Brad J. Lamb Realty and Brad, what is it? Brad J. Lamb Development Corp? Is it?
It's Lamb Development.
Lamb Development Corp. And I highly encourage you, because I'm an investor. Check out the Television City project in Hamilton. Thanks, my man. I really appreciate it.
You're listening to the Todd Shapiro Show.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.
On Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.